evening. Welcome to the Darlow podcast, episode 54 of the greatest podcast in the world. Listen, massive Friday night, massive weekend in the Championship, and as always, I'm joined by Tom Goff. Tom, how are we doing?
I'm right, man. I'm right. I just seen Borough gone 2 up, haven't they?
Yes, they have. Just I must have hit the go button in silence to tell you. So, it's cut to Valerian Ismail there, and he looks.
There must be some big boos ringing around Ewood Park.
Well, beforehand, there was a kind of stand up if you hate Venky's chant, and everyone was on their feet. It's just cut to Steve Wootton and Rudy Gestead as well. So they are not over the month. They've not heeded that advice to stay away, have they? And it's gone toxic. We'll start there actually because you've jumped straight in.
Sorry, mate.
The billing, and I'm happy.
It flashed up just as you were doing the intro. It flashed up, mate. I couldn't help myself. Sorry.
No, listen. As I say, go edge of the box. Oh no! It's like a wicked deflection off. He actually laid it off. He's hit it. It's going wide. Defender's just nodded it past the keeper.
Oh dear.
That's the luck they've got at the minute. Blackburn. Let's start with Blackburn because obviously look at the protest fell on deaf ears. It's toxic up there at the minute, more so than it has ever been. It would appear.
Yes, mate. Yeah, it's just not happened for Valerian Ismail, has it? I think we obviously discussed in detail the appointment when he was brought in, and I think we both said at the time that it was a risk because there was ultimately quite a difference in style and approach between Ismail and John Eustace, who had obviously got Blackburn, right in the middle of that playoff mix, and that I think it was myself who said that. Well, as long as Ismail kind of keeps them in that playoff hunt, even if they drop out, as long as they're kind of right in the middle of that, with the mix, the hunting pack, and they're picking up enough points to stay in touch, then I think the Blackburn fans, will get behind him, and they'll show their support. But ultimately, since he's come in, they've just slid down the table, haven't they? And they continue to do so. And there's just no signs of any sort of kind of change in fortune. There's no signs of any sort of whatever work's being done on the training pitch, that then transgressing across onto the performance on a match day. It's there's just no improvement there whatsoever, and obviously they're 2-0 down already inside 10 minutes, against the Borough team who are one of those teams chasing for the playoffs. They themselves have the opposite direction, aren't they? At this moment in time, they've picked up a bit of form once again, stringing a few results together, and it looks like, I know it's still a lot to play, but I'll be very surprised if Blackburn go and get something from this game now.
Yeah, look, it's, as I say, live pictures here, so forgive me, but the whole place just looks void of any kind of inspiration. Even the manager himself is kind of slumped back on his chair. It just looks like they've got that all wrong. Look, hindsight's a wonderful thing. We spoke a couple of weeks ago about Alan Sheehan and how that kind of kept a bit of continuity for Swansea, buys them a bit of time. If they don't want to keep him beyond the end of the season, they can start looking in the summer. It's always a difficult window, not only for kind of players, but bringing in a manager midway through a season is difficult as well. Especially, I know Rudy Gestead says they're not hunting for managers on the cheap, but it sounded like they'd sniffed out a couple of managers and couldn't afford them. Dave Lowe was doing a bit of a job. Did he win 3 on the bounce, was it? You wonder why they didn't keep him in charge and maybe just keep that until the end of the season, because everything that had been built up has been washed away in the matter of kind of 4 or 5 games. All this stuff with the fans now. There's now, a lot of concern about players that run out of contract. Tyrese Dolan, a big one. I'm sure he'll be not lost in terms of suitors, in terms of the Championship at least. I don't know if any Premier League team was coming for him, but certainly the Championship, you can imagine, on a free transfer. Clubs at the top would probably look in, whether that's a Middlesbrough, a West Brom, someone would be interested in him, especially on a free as well. So it's just gone all Pete Tong, as I said to you when it came on, stuff online, fans saying that if he loses this Ishmael, he's going to go. Do you think that seems a bit premature, or just is it time for just kind of how do they play this out, the Blackburn board? Because he won't go. Look, do you know what? There's a lot of
similarities to, the issues going on with Sheffield Wednesday, what we discussed in the last pod, to obviously what's going on with Blackburn, in that they were ultimately overachieving, weren't they, under John Eustace? He was getting the absolute maximum, if not more, out of an average Championship squad, really. And the Venky's, when Eustace obviously made his mind up that he wanted to go to Derby, because he was obviously the one who pushed that move. He was the one who made his decision early doors and stuck with it. That was their opportunity then to show some ambition in bringing in really top draw replacement for John Eustace, someone who there was going to be a lot of confidence amongst the players and the fan base that they could continue to find work that Eustace had done and keep her in that playoff mix. You've just touched on that. They were linked with quite a few different names, and it kind of seemed that when Ishmael was appointed, someone who obviously was out of work at the time, had a few jobs in the Championship. He did well at Barnsley, but his jobs since then haven't really gone well. It did very much seem that they kind of went down the cheaper route, which is pretty much the route that they've gone down since day one, isn't it, the Venky? So, I don't think the Blackburn Rovers fans would have been surprised, but it would have been disappointing for them, because under Eustace they had as good a chance as anyone in that bunch of teams to go and get one of those last couple of playoff places. But I think when Ishmael was appointed, a lot of them were probably concerned, and those concerns are they're getting proven right now, aren't they? He just hasn't got them going whatsoever, and it's safe to say that they've declined, haven't they, since he's come in? There's no ifs or buts about it. So,
Do you think
I was just going to touch on. Sorry, I think you made a great point, and I kind of went off point then a little bit. But at the start, what you were saying in terms of, I keep forgetting his name, the interim boss who came in.
Dave Lowe.
So when Dave Lowe come in, like you said, all I think back to is that game against us at the Hawthorns where they beat us comfortably, and I was really, really impressed with the performance. And like I said, we lost comfortably at home against one of the teams we were competing for a playoff spot. And like you said, it wasn't a fluke either. They put a bit of a run together underneath him. So, I don't know. Only they will know why they didn't think to themselves, well, let's just see how this goes. He's doing well. He's keeping us in the mix. We're putting some promising performances. You're starting to get a few performances out of players that hadn't really done much under Eustace. I think of Gay, who started scoring goals underneath him. I don't know. You'd have to ask them. Hindsight's a wonderful thing as well, isn't it? But I think they'll be looking at that now, thinking, we made the wrong call here. We should have given it to Lowe for the remainder of the season, and just see how he got on, and then if we were to fall just short of the playoffs, which I think even under Lowe they probably would have. I think in terms of the other teams that are fighting and competing alongside them. But I think still, if Lowe was maybe to have dropped off a little bit and they were to miss out on the playoffs, I don't think the backlash would be as severe as it is now. Ishmael coming in, them going on a really poor run. The Blackburn fans are obviously pointing the fingers at the Venky, saying, "What on earth have you done here? Why have you appointed this guy? He's come in and he's made us worse." So, you're spot on. They should have done that.
Do you think if Dave Lowe had stayed in charge, regardless of whether they made the playoffs or not, it would have staved off all this negativity now, the protests, etc.?
I don't necessarily think the protest, because, like I said, that the Blackburn fans haven't been happy with the Venky's for a long time now. Like I said, a lot of similarities to what's going on at Sheffield Wednesday. The question is, why are they owners of a football club? Because there doesn't seem to be any intent, any ambition from them to try and advance and progress as a club. They've just been just stale for a long time now, Blackburn. So yeah, I don't think necessarily it would have kind of stopped the moans and groans and the protests from the fans, but I just think I think it maybe wouldn't have been as bad. I think you're right. I think the Ishmael appointment and the fact he's done so poorly since he's come in has just kind of added fire to the fuel. It's just like squeeze the petrol, hasn't it, onto the bonfire. So, yeah, it's just kind of all culminated into a right mess, unfortunately for the Blackburn fans.
You'd have thought, as you say there, the Venkies have not shown any ambition maybe in their whole tenure there. However, go back a couple of months, they were in a driving seat for a playoff place. You'd have maybe thought they'd got a bit of a taste for it, that Premier League money, and then use that as fuel to kind of motivate them to say, do you know what, actually, for the first time in a long time, we could do something here. And they've just not capitalised on that at all. And do you think that the negativity impacts on the players? Because the players look like shells at the minute. I'm looking at Travis in the first kind of 5 minutes, lost. Todd Cantwell, he looks like the worst version of himself. And I say that, I've watched the guy for a couple of seasons. On his day, a great player, but looks kind of disinterested, losing the ball. Do you think that comes from maybe negativity off the pitch and other, rather than being able to focus on what they're trying to do?
Yeah, I think to a degree, you're right. Any sort of, like you said, negativity off the pitch, issues with the board and the fans protesting, etc., doesn't help, does it? That's a given. I think, again, like we're using hindsight, but I just think that the appointment of Ishmael was such an odd one because of, I touched on it earlier on in the way he approaches football games, how he has his team set up, etc., was very stark contrast to John Eustace and how he sets his teams up. And he's, again, you've got to question the decision making from whoever it was making those calls behind the scenes, because again, touching on what you were saying about Lowe, obviously someone who worked alongside Eustace knew his methods, knew what was working, what wasn't working, knew what to expect out of certain players, etc., etc. Ishmael's come in, he started from scratch, and I guarantee, because I obviously know what he was like at West Brom, and then obviously when he went to Watford afterwards, he's very much got one way he likes to approach football, one set of tactics. He's obviously gone in, tried to implement that at Blackburn, and I've been reading a few kind of Blackburn pages and comments and threads and stuff like that, and they're just saying, he hasn't got the players available to implement the style he wants, but then he himself then hasn't got the ability to adapt and implement something temporary till the end of the season to keep him in the mix, and then you can work hard in the summer then to try and get your message across. He obviously hasn't got that ability within him to do that. Sounds a bit harsh, but bit of a one-trick pony kind of thing, and he's coming in. It's just not working, is it? So, and I think the players, who were obviously succeeding under Eustace, obviously had a way of training, approaching games, tactics, etc., etc. That's probably all just been kind of swiped away by Ishmael and trying something different. It's not working. So, like you said, the players are just automatically, their heads are going to drop, aren't they? They're going to start feeling disgruntled. It's like I said, mate. It's a mess. I just kind of, I don't see. There's just no signs of it improving at all. I just think it's only going to go one direction. From now until the end of the season, and that's south for him.
Just on a kind of wider topic then, because you've said there about, you've mentioned Sheffield Wednesday a couple of times, and kind of compared. Now, it does show you how perilous this league can be. Only maybe months ago, we're talking these teams up in a positive manner, and in a matter of 12 weeks, that there's it's unfolded, and as you say, worst case scenario, both teams could have new managers next season, and kind of squads ripped apart, and could be kind of fit two big clubs in English football. Blackburn have won the Premier League. We know how massive Sheffield Wednesday are as well. Could be looking at down the barrel of fighting off relegation for League One. It just shows you the margins in this division.
Yeah, it does. And look, it's easy for us to say. We obviously do not know the fine details, as to what these clubs can and can't do financially. And it's easy for us to sit here and criticise, but it did feel like, with Sheffield Wednesday, for example, that if they were to just backroll a little bit more in the January transfer window, giving him a couple more decent additions, that he would have been able to kind of keep them. They are still in the mix to an extent, but be in an even better position at this moment in time. And the same can be applied with Blackburn. Obviously we don't know what was said between Eustace and the fallout and so on and so on, but was there an opportunity for them to try and tempt him to try and stay, offer him a new contract? And then again, they were probably one of the least active clubs in the January transfer window, weren't they? I remember them scrambling around at the end of the window to try and make a couple of signings because they'd done no business up until then. So again, it's just frustrating for both those sets of fan bases because, like you said, at that moment in time, they were in such a great position, but you did feel that they've got to, the owners have got to back the managers. They've got to add to the squad a little bit more if they're to remain in these positions. It didn't happen. We said at the time, well, I wouldn't be surprised now to see them drop off because they haven't added like the other teams. Obviously, Blackburn lost Eustace. It's just those decisions behind the scenes by the board, by management and so on. Like I said, hindsight's brilliant, but it just seems poor decision making is ultimately now cost of poor decision making, and I feel lack of ambition. Like I said, it is easy to say that, but I think it's a fair comment to state because this hasn't just happened this season with both these teams. This has happened consistently for a few seasons now, and like you said, no lessons seem to be learned. So. Yeah, like I said, I just feel sorry for the fan base because, like you said, they've got two clubs with a lot of history. I know Blackburn Rovers get criticised sometimes for how many fans are in the stadium, etc., etc. But it's a very small place. It is a very small place. So yeah. Like you said, I think I'm very confident that neither of those two teams are going to get into the playoffs this season, so they're going to be in the Championship next season. But then, like you said, I just think it's going to be a case then of damage limitations because, like you said, players are going to get plucked. Sheffield Wednesday might lose their manager, who's their biggest asset. I think it's going to be a very difficult summer for both teams.
Yeah, agreed here. Just a quick word on Borough. I know we spoke about them midweek. This win, which looks like it's going to be, you'd be hard pushed to see a kind of 3-goal swing in Blackburn's favour, albeit with only 25 minutes played. But that's now Middlesbrough up into 5th place. They've leapfrogged yourselves in Coventry. Obviously, you guys play tomorrow. You've got Sunderland at home, Coventry hosting Burnley. So tricky games for both opposition. I think you'll agree there. I saw before the game Middlesbrough up there in the form guide. You look at the last kind of 6 games played, I think they're 2nd or 3rd. So they're having a bit of a resurgence of late. We spoke about the other night about things clicking in, but Michael Carrick seems to be trying to rein that in. I think having gone through a bit of a low over the last few weeks, he doesn't want to get carried away, maybe.
Yeah, he's just that's kind of standard manager waffle, isn't it? It's he will be doing everything he can to try and make sure they don't get carried away because, like you said, they've picked up form at a really good time. You look back at the playoffs over the years, the teams that win those playoffs and get promoted to Premier League, 9 times out of 10 are a team that's picked up some good form towards the end of the season and gone into those playoffs in red hot form and carried that through those fixtures in the playoffs. So he'll be obviously trying to keep them level-headed, not get carried away. But it's like I said to you, mate, it doesn't surprise me. I think the likes of ourselves, the likes of just the likes of Bristol City. It's difficult to criticise Coventry City because of obviously the rise that they've had, since Lampard came in. Them just getting into the mix themselves is a fantastic achievement. But I do think about ourselves in particular in Bristol City. We did not take enough of advantage of when Middlesbrough in that really poor run of form. And I think back, they, at one point, I think they lost 4 or 5 games on the bounce. For them to do that, but then still be within touching distance, like I said, the likes of ourselves, the likes of Bristol, the likes of Watford, whoever, absolutely kicking ourselves that we just didn't take advantage of that. Because like I've said to you, Middlesbrough, I've always felt have had that ability to string a bit of a run together and push on at any time. I know they've had a few injuries, and like you said, they've had consistency problems. All the way throughout the season, but they have had periods where they have been playing incredibly well, proved a real threat. Give anyone in this division a game. They made some good signs in January, which I think was important for them as well, because I think those guys have started to bed in, started to have an impact. Iheanacho now seems to have kind of settled. He's starting to get involved in the goals, Whittaker, etc. So Conway coming back. Like I said, I just felt that they were, due to the fact they were still there somehow in touching distance. It was, they were always capable of doing what they're doing now, and I'm not surprised. I really am not. They were the team I worried about the most, even when Coventry were going on that brilliant run. Bristol City obviously found some form. I was always worried about Middlesbrough because I just feel they've got the best manager out of those teams. I feel that they've got the best players as well. I think that they're the team out of all that group, outside the top 4, that group who are chasing for the playoffs. I think they've got some of the best players, the best squad as well available to them, when everyone's fit. So, it doesn't surprise me. Obviously, I hope it wasn't going to happen, but it looks like they are picking up at just the perfect time.
Do you think there was a moment where maybe Steve Gibson and the board did have to have a conversation with them, whether it was formal or informal? Because I'm trying to think of the game. Was it down at Swansea where they lost 3? I'm trying to think of the game. It may have been Swansea away where they lost the game. It might have been 2 or 3-0. You'll be able to remind me. I'm sure you've got it up there somewhere, but it might have been Swansea. But anyway, dreadful performance. Middlesbrough fans were online afterwards saying that was it. That was the last straw. But the fact that they kind of stuck with him, you just said there, you think he's arguably the best manager in the division. Was this kind of the last roll of the dice for him at this football club? He's got to try and get them into the playoffs. He's got to try and do something this season, because it seems like every start of every season they're talked about and nothing's really come to fruition.
I think so. I think he's got to at the very least get playoffs this season. I think if he gets playoffs, I think it'll be job done in terms of their expectations at the start of the season. I think if they were to have missed out on playoffs this season, which is obviously a chance of him still doing, I think you're right. I do think there'll be some pressure there because, like you said, I do rate Carrick highly. When his team's on form, they are a really good team to watch. It's really enjoyable watching them. I think he's got a big future in the game, but I think you're right in that Middlesbrough, they are one of the biggest spenders, outside the teams that get relegated, and they're obviously got those parachute payments available to them. Middlesbrough for the last few seasons now have been one of the biggest spenders from the rest. So, I think their expectation at the start of the season would be to be in the playoffs at the very least. And to be honest with you, I think they're going to achieve that. But I think you've got to probably give Gibson some credit because, like you said, when they went on that really poor run, I think it was probably towards the end of Feb. Yeah, the end of Feb. So they lost to Bristol,
Watford, Bristol, and then they did lose at Swansea. It was 1-0.
Lost at Sheffield United, lost at Sunderland. So they lost 4 on the bounce, I think. And then again, a bit of inconsistency. For him to kind of keep the faith, give him his backing, where others might have quite easily pulled the trigger because it looked at that time like their season was derailing, wasn't it? He kept faith, and it's proven the right decision now. So he's got to be given some credit for that, because, like you said, I remember a lot of Middlesbrough fans. You probably say the vast majority of fans at that point were saying,
done.
He's got to go, because he's not. This squad's a good squad. He should be doing better at this level, which they were right in stating that, but they've shown the faith, and it's proven like it was the right call.
Just a quick yes or no. They're in the top 6 as it stands. Will they still be in the top 6 at 5 o'clock tomorrow?
At 5 o'clock tomorrow, yes.
Yes, there you go. You heard it here first. We'll come back to that on Monday night. Okay. Quick, my sheet's all over the place now, because that's not how I wanted to start the podcast. However, that is the beauty of live podding. Honestly, I should have bought a cold beer up, but I'm driving early tomorrow. I thought I'd be a good boy. I'll behave myself. Right, okay. The big story of the week, Melly. We spoke about him on, what night was that? Thursday? No, what night were we on? Tuesday night. We spoke about him on Tuesday night, didn't we? And obviously Farke's come out since, said that he spoke to Carl Darlow. He will be in goal for the trip to Luton tomorrow. Another early kickoff down there at 12:30. What do you make of it? Farke, have you saw the kind of interview Farke's done with the guy from Sky Sports?
I haven't, no.
So he's kind of, it's a strange one, because he said, look, I persevered with him more than I would an outfield player. If an outfield player has 2 or 3 bad games, whip him out. You can't really do that with a goalkeeper. But he said that at the start of the week he spoke, which I found interesting. He said I spoke to the players, and I told them about my decision, which makes me think it was maybe starting to show in the squad.
Yeah, 100%. We said, didn't we, on Tuesday, that the footage of the players' reactions when those goals went in against Swansea was not good viewing whatsoever. In that, goalkeepers make mistakes. Even the best goalkeepers in the world make mistakes, but they're few and far between. Infrequent. And normally, what happens is your goalkeeper makes a mistake. Your players normally will try and lift them, won't they? They'll try and lift them, chin up. Come on, let's get the ball, centre circle, crack on with it. Keepers make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes on the pitch. Let's go again. But there was just absolutely none of that. There wasn't a single player, I don't think, that kind of went over to Meslier after the first one, which was the real clanger, wasn't it? To try and comfort him, try and lift his spirits, try and help him shake it off and get on with the rest of the game. Some of the reactions were like hands over mouth, weren't they? It was almost a bit like comical to be honest. But I think that just showed you how bad it had got amongst the players, in that they'd obviously clearly completely lost faith in him. And it's like we said, didn't we, on Tuesday? To be fair, I don't want to say I wasn't certain at all. I think I said I'll be interested to see what he does, but I think both of us were saying, personally, we'd be astonished if he doesn't mix it up, because I think the combination of what I've just been saying, the fact that they've now lost ground on Sheffield United, Burnley have obviously caught them up. It's very much a 3-horse race now. There's so much on the line. And Meslier himself, mentally, this can't have done him any good. And I think him as a person, as a professional, I think he probably needs to come away from it for a bit. I think for the good of his career ultimately, because if he was to, if Farke was to insist on starting him, and heaven forbid he was to make a couple more mistakes between now and the end of the season and cost Leeds one of those automatic spots, it could have a real damaging effect to him, as a player and going into the future. So I think he's made the right call. I really do. I think he's made the right decision. I bet you the vast majority of Leeds fans are in agreement as well. And like I said, Darlow, he's not a bad replacement to have. And I said to you, it's not even like he's been sat on the sidelines, or he's been maybe getting a few under-23 matches under his belt. He had a good little run of international games for Wales not too long ago. So the hope there from Leeds will be that he's a bit fresher than maybe people are expecting.
Look, as you've highlighted, and we spoke about the other night, we're running out of games basically, and he's lured Farke into a false sense of security. Before, Farke said, look, I had a conversation with him, and he said he had an infallible February. He said, he had clean sheets, man of the match performances, but now he's kind of dipped back into that, and you can't afford that to creep in. You keep him in for Luton, and he does well there, but then he's got a ricket in him the next game. Do you think this is it now? Darlow keep the jersey till the end of the season, barring any major disappointments? He's, just to kind of for one reason to install faith in the back four again and the teammates for one.
I think so, yeah. But I tell you what, it's some serious pressure on Darlow. It's going to be interesting to see how he copes with it, because 9 times out of 10, that number 2 goalkeeper is obviously brought into the squad due to injury, aren't they? And then I feel like, well, there's obviously always an element of pressure, but the pressure's not as intense, I don't think, as to you're coming into the team to replace a goalkeeper who's been playing poorly and making mistakes, because I always think you probably have at the back of your mind, well, I've got to absolutely make sure that I don't make any clangers, and at the very least, if I get beaten, it's a good effort. They've made me work for it. So he's going to be under immense pressure. But like I said, he's a guy who's he's had a lot of experience at this level. Just been playing some international game for Wales. So I think Leeds are very fortunate they've got such a good goalkeeper as their number 2, who's able to come and step in for him, because a lot of clubs in this division probably haven't got someone with as much experience and as much quality, and wouldn't have been able to afford to have made the switch, but Leeds have. And I can't see any reason why he can't come in and just kind of slip in effortlessly, so to speak.
If you are Matt Bloomfield and you get that news midweek, you are gutted, aren't you? Absolutely gutted. That
I think so, because he will undoubtedly have been working on the training pitch. One of Luton's strengths, obviously, is their kind of physicality. They've got some big old lads up top, Adebayo and Colton Morris, some big centre-backs. He would have definitely been focusing on set pieces, getting it right under the crossbar, applying as much pressure as possible to him. I think they're still going to take that approach, try and kind of disrupt Darlow and force him into a mistake and try and knock his confidence early doors. But I think, they would have been really hoping that he keeps his place, because I think they would have been maybe fancying kind of causing him some problems, let's say, from set piece scenarios.
What do you make of the race for the top then? Burnley, obviously, we see at Coventry. Sheffield United are at Oxford. You can't see Sheffield United slipping up down there, can you?
Hold on, mate. Let me bring the fixtures up. I know you just read them off, but I was a little bit too fast. Who? So Coventry, Burnley. Oh, that's a cracker in it. Yeah, that's going to be a good game.
There is potential that Sheffield United could be third before 3 o'clock if Burnley and Leeds both win their games. Then it's over to them again. This is what I like. The pressure shifting from one to the other. The pendulum swapping. And if Burnley can get a win at Coventry and make it, is that 28 games without a defeat? It's massive. That what a stat!
It is a crazy stat. And again, I'm included in this. I still don't think Parker's probably getting enough credit as he probably deserves. And it's so odd, isn't it? Because it's not just like us two on this pod. It's across the board. They're still. I don't feel that they're getting talked up about enough. And it's a bit bad, really. And like you said, if they go and get the 3 points against Coventry City, then Coventry, obviously one of the informed teams in the division. Lampard's done a brilliant job to get them in playoff contention. They will be hoping to bounce back to winning ways. Obviously, after that defeat against Sheffield United last time round, I think the stadium's going to be absolutely rocking. I think the Coventry fans are going to be right behind them. They'll be thinking we can get something from this, but if Burnley are able to, again, shut up shop, get the 3 points, then, Scott Parker really needs to be getting talked about a bit more, I feel. Like I said, I feel as of now he's not getting enough credit, but, if he can get 3 points there, arguably...
You said the other night, though, you said you felt Coventry could get something at home to...
I do. I still do. I feel like I fancy Coventry to be up for this. Let's put it that way. I think they're going to be really up for it. Like I said, the crowd behind them. It's going to be a close game. I tell you what, I don't think... Because Sheffield United, I was really impressed with how they disposed of Coventry last time round. I know they were at home, but I don't think it's going to be the case in this game. I don't think Burnley are going to win as convincingly as Sheffield United. I think it's going to be a real close, hard-fought encounter. And like you said, I do fancy Coventry to get something from it. I really do.
Sheffield United at Oxford, do you think they'll be back at the top come 5 p.m?
Yeah, I just... Sheffield United, mate. My big buddy, my big...
You mentioned, obviously, the Coventry game. That's as good as they've looked, I think, all season. They had a bit of a swagger about them again. Yeah,
100%. It was like the Sheffield United at the start of the season. That's what it reminded me of, where they were just looking really slick, dangerous in attack every time they came forward. Their star guys were really turning it on. Gustavo Hamer had a cracking game, against his old team. Yeah, they were really impressive. I think they brought O'Hare off the bench and Tom Cannon off the bench. It's just showing you kind of the crazy depth that they've got available to them. So yeah, again, anything's possible, mate. But I just can't see anything other than Sheffield United 3 points there. Luton Town Leeds is an interesting one, mate, because obviously Luton ground out that win against Hull. It wasn't pretty. I don't know if you saw the own goal that won in the game. Yeah, it was comical, wasn't it? It was a absolutely stinking game.
You need that sort of stuff when you're down the bottom, don't you? You need that little bit of luck. You've got to have that.
100%, you do. And to be fair to Luton, they haven't had much luck this season. So, I don't think anyone can say they weren't deserving of a bit of luck. But that win has kept them in touching distance. Obviously, Derby won in midweek, which has put the pressure back on them a bit. But again, with how Leeds are stuttering, the nerves, or what we've been talking about with Meslier, I think Luton can get something from it, mate. I honestly do.
He's gone for it.
I do. I think the fans are going to be well up for that. I think the fans are going to be right behind them. And I honestly feel if they can get a good start, Luton, again, I know it's bloody... cliches and all that stuff. But I think if Luton can get a good start, if they can take the lead, it's going to be really interesting then to see how Leeds react to that, because it's not been a good couple of weeks for them, has it, at all?
Just if we can go on to Derby, actually, because you mentioned obviously the game in midweek, they're out of the bottom three. John Eustace has played it down. He said, it's all right, well and good being out in the bottom three now, but we want to be there on the last day of the season. They go to Swansea tomorrow. I know Swansea they're actually turned things around a little bit. They're not going to go down. They look okay. Well, they're on 45 points, but yeah, you wouldn't fancy them to go down. I think Stoke and Oxford are probably going to be the ones that might be in some kind of trouble. But I watched the game in the week. It wasn't pretty, far from it, but it was effective. And I just kind of felt at the end of the game, watching the players, listening to the crowd, there's a little bit of belief there now. There's a little bit of belief. Too
right, mate. And what a turnaround from Eustace. As much as you and me rate him a lot, I don't think either of us, after that, that poor start that they had under him when he came in, I don't think any of us kind of predicted them to be sat where they are now and put a run of 4 wins, on the bounce. Just absolutely unbelievable. But I think you just kind of hit the nail on the head there. as to what John Eustace is as a manager. He's just he is effective. That's it can be a bit of a hard watch at times, and sometimes there's not much in the way of kind of attacking intent and excitement, but he's shown now, and he's shown it with Blues, he's shown it with his time at Blackburn, and he's obviously now showing it with Derby that he can get a team organised quickly. He can make them difficult to beat and score past. Defensively effective, and have that ability to start grinding out some results. So, unbelievable job he's doing there. And again, it's just another cliche, mate. I'm throwing them out there tonight, but it's all about form. It's all about form at this time of the season. It's all about putting a little bit of a run together and building confidence. That is what is gonna determine your season for you. Derby.
So I want to put this to you. Actually, the run in. They've obviously got Swansea away, Burnley at home, Pompey away, Luton at home, West Brom away, Hull away, and Stoke at home. They've got some teams in and around them, haven't they? Pompey, Luton, Hull, Stoke. That game on the last day of the season at Pride Park against Stoke could be huge.
I think that's brilliant for them, though. I honestly think they will be better suited. Some teams obviously find it easier to. I'm just trying to think how to phrase this. I think since he's shown since he's come in that the wins he's been getting have been against. I think Bar Coventry have been against the teams in and around them, haven't they?
Blackburn as well, haven't they?
They beat Blackburn as well. But I think the game against Preston at home, that's a good get. You're looking at that as a fan thinking, I've got to get 3 points here. Plymouth away, that's we've got to try and at least get a point there, stop them winning. We've got to get something from that game. He went and got something from the game. So he's picking up. He's picking up points. He's picking up wins against those teams in and around them. So I think he'll be looking at that running and he'll be thinking, great. They're the teams that I want to play. Those teams are undoubtedly looking at Derby, going, oh Jesus, we probably had these written off. We probably thought there's only two teams, two spots now for relegation. Derby were absolutely done 4 games ago, but now they're the informed team in that second half of the table. 4 wins on the bounce. I'm just looking now at everyone else down there. I think Hull are probably the team behind them in terms of form, but they've only won 2 from the last 6. So yeah, it's
worrying times for Gary Rowett, isn't it? We said when he was appointed he'd done a good job. He really got a bounce out of him, but it's that 1 win in 6 games. It's not great reading. They've got to try and turn around, and they've got a really tricky one tomorrow, as you said, at home to league leaders.
Yeah, they ain't getting anything at the weekend, I don't think, mate. So you'd fancy him to be, dragged even closer to that, to that line.
We can get something at Swansea to put a bit more pressure on, because what's the difference there? 1 point. Are Derby capable of a draw down there?
I think they are. I think, on paper, they've obviously got an easier fixture, but
better goal difference than Oxford as well. So all it takes is get a point and Oxford get pummeled.
Yeah. Swansea are probably the strangest team in the division, though, mate. They obviously got that draw against Leeds last time round. All right, there was some, I was going to then say, they were fortuitous, but they had a penalty saved as well. And from what I watched and the report I read afterwards, they gave it a really good go. And like you said, they had definitely picked up a bit. So I think that's a really tough game as well. It's obviously not as tough as Sheffield United at home, but that's going to be a test for Derby, because I think Swansea will be fancying 3 points there to try and their aim now from now until the end of the season is just see how many places they can climb up the division. Obviously, they're way too far away for a playoff spot, but it's it's that question how they go about it. Is there is there going to be a bit of complacency there from they're going to take their foot off the gas, already thinking about the beach, etc., or are they going to give it a real good go from now until the end of the season and spring a few surprises like they did against Leeds last weekend?
Cardiff as well. They've slipped into the bottom three. They go to QPR. That's no easy task, as we know. But QPR have kind of dropped off a little bit as well. So, okay, look, we're going to finish off with a bit of fun. I was going to talk about West Brom Sunderland, but we'll leave that till we come back. We're going to be at the game tomorrow. We'll leave that till Monday night. Hopefully, we're coming in here with big smiles, because that could be massive, given obviously the ramifications of tonight's.
I'm not coming on Monday, mate. If we lose, all right. I'm just putting it out there now. All right.
You say again? Sorry.
So I'm not coming on the pod Monday if we lose. All right.
Putting a signal in. Okay. Yeah. So I want you to build a five-a-side team. I've picked some players from the top. We'll start at the bottom. We'll finish on the top. All right.
All right. Yeah.
I'll give you two names. You just got to pick one. Give me a little explanation why. Yeah. Five-a-side team. All right. I'll put a little note next to who you pick, and we'll clip it up and put it on TikTok. Okay, goalkeeper. I've got Hull's Pandur or Derby's Zetterstrom.
Zetterstrom. I like Zetterstrom, mate. I think he's. I think Pandur's a good goalkeeper as well, but I've seen Zetterstrom a few times this season on the box, and he does look a real talent. I know he had a couple of stinkers, didn't he, a few weeks back, and he let in a couple of howlers, but they've been few and far between from what I've seen. And I know the Derby fans rate him. I know the Derby fans like him a lot. I don't know how old he is, but I've got a feeling that he's not too old. I think he's still.
He's a young keeper.
Yeah, I think he's got plenty of playing years ahead of him. And also, mate, he's got the Petr Cech hat on, hasn't he? I think that adds a little something.
He's 26. I knew you were going to mention the hat. I knew it.
It adds a little something. I think that just makes him better, because he has the Petr Cech on. So, Zetterstrom just.
Then we've got Nikola Katic on Nat Phillips. This may be quick fire. Come on.
Nat Phillips.
Nat Phillips at Derby or Nikola Katic at Plymouth.
I've got to go Katic. Katic is the Ukrainian lad, isn't it?
No, he's the Bosnian, the one that lost his tooth in the FA Cup.
Yeah, well, still, I think those two have been absolutely brilliant since they signed for. I think Nat Phillips is a decent player, and he's putting in he's been one of the star performers, obviously, in this resurgence under Eustace. But I think those two lads that came in, I know it looks like Plymouth are going down, but they at the very least give them a fighting chance. Proper defenders, real personalities as well. I like both of them a lot. So Katic I'm going for.
Colville at Cardiff or Asgard at Luton?
Asgard, man. I'm an Asgard fan. Look, Colwell's a good player. I do rate Colwell as well at Cardiff. Again, he's got a bright future ahead of him.
I stuck them both up against each other because I knew you liked both there.
If Cardiff go down, he's definitely not going to be there next season. Let's put it that way. But yeah, Asgard, he was just a player I really liked when he was at Wigan. I was hoping that we'd put in a sneaky bid for him. It's going to be a bit of a travesty if he ends up going down with Luton, because he should definitely be playing in the Championship 100%. So I like Asgard. Yeah.
Gelhardt or Bundu?
Who's Bundu? Who's
little black number 10 at Plymouth?
Mate, I can't even put a name to the face. It's got to be Gelhardt. But I like Joe Gelhardt. I was singing his praise when Hull signed him. When we had that Hull lad on, he wasn't a fan, and I was in his corner saying, no, he's a decent player. I remember him at Sunderland under Tony Mowbray, funnily enough, when he was on loan at Sunderland, and he had a stellar season for them. And he's done well for Hull, hasn't he? He's scored a few goals. He's kind of contributed. So Gelhardt for me.
And finally, your striker. It's a tough one, this. Jerry Yates or Salic at Cardiff?
I just have to go Yates because I've seen more of him. And again, I feel like I think most people would probably be surprised with how many goals he's scored this season. I bet you he's got to be double figures or very close to it. And again, he's a player who's he's really started to shine, hasn't he, under John Eustace? He's starting to score a few goals from important goals. He obviously scored in midweek. So, yeah, I'd go Yates. Isn't Yates on loan as well? Is he on loan from Swansea, which I just find a bit crazy in itself? That Derby haven't signed him. I'm sure he's only on loan from Swansea for the season, which I just find a bit bonkers because you'd think Swansea City could do with a player like him, to be fair.
Well, he's scored 8 goals this season in the league. He's just outside double figures. But okay, that's you got I'll run through your famous five: Zetterstrom, Katic, Asgard, Gelhardt, Jerry Yates. It's not bad for a bottom 4 or 5 5-a-side team. Let's go and finish on the top then, because this one's tasty. Cooper off Trafford.
You know, I prefer Cooper, mate. Look, Trafford. I don't know what it is about Trafford. There's something I just don't like about him. I don't know if there's a bit of arrogance there. He's a little bit cocky, I think. He's undoubtedly a top keeper. Yeah, you're not in the England squad for no reason, but I think there's something a bit more old school about Cooper, which I like. I just think he's he's got a bit of a throwback to him, but he's still really good keeper. He's a Premier League goalie in waiting, I think. So yeah, I've got to go Cooper, I think.
Junior Firpo or the Frenchman Esteve at Burnley?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Again, I'm just going to go Firpo because I just enjoy watching him more. I think he's obviously been such a goal threat for Leeds this season. Steve at Burnley, the amount of clean sheets they've had, unbelievable. And he does look a real talent, but they did pay a fair bit of money for him. I go Firpo to edge it just because I've really enjoyed watching him play this season. He's chipped in with a lot of goal contributions as well.
Josh Brownell or Gus Hamer?
Oh.
Well, that's a noise we'll be hearing later on tonight.
Mate, that is a tough. I'm going to say Brownhill. I'm a big fan of Brownhill. He's the fact that he's Burnley's top scorer. I think he's definitely
out of contract in the summer.
That is mental. He's a cap. He's got obviously he's nowhere near the same caliber of player, but he is like Gerrard, Lampard-esque in that he can do a bit of everything. He scores a lot of goals, a lot of assists, but he can chip in defence as well and get back. Real proper all-round midfielder. I do love Gus Hamer as well. I think he's a great player, but Brownhill for me.
Sidney Peck or Eel Tanaka?
Tanaka. The hype around Peck, I'm not saying he's not a decent player, but I think it's got a little bit out of hand of late. The guy, I don't think he's scored yet this season, has he? I just think that kind of speaks volumes. The other guys we're talking about here, I know he sits a bit deeper than the likes of Hamer and Brownhill, but Tanaka, he's in the same position as him. He must have scored about half a dozen or so, chipped in with quite a few assists as well. So I think Tanaka's, he's in the debate for player of the season as well for me. He's been brilliant.
Oh, I can't wait for that podcast. We should actually do that in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, let's do that next week. We'll have a bit of a chat about that, yeah?
Yeah, definitely, man.
Striker, Isidore or Tyrese Campbell?
Oh, that's a good one.
I've enjoyed putting these two. I've enjoyed watching your faces.
I'm going to tell you what I'm doing on Monday. I'm going to do one for you. I think you've got to do one as well, man.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
I'll do one for you. Different players, but same concept. And I'll see you squirm then. All right. So Campbell and Isidore from Sunderland.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go Campbell, but I tell you what, I owe Isidore an apology, man. I was giving him some stick earlier on in the season. He was, to be fair, he was fluffing a lot of chances. He wasn't as clinical as he needed to be. He obviously had that horror show where he missed those penalties against Burnley at the end of the game. But I tell you what, since then, I think he's been he's been absolutely top draw, and I think he's shown a lot of determination to kind of turn it round, and now he definitely is in the conversation as one of the as to one of the best strikers in the Championship for sure. But I just think Campbell, for me, again, I think it's a bit of a great story really, because when they signed him, I just felt it was just going to be squad filler. I just felt that Kiefer Moore was probably going to run the line for him, and then when they signed Berriton Diaz and Cannon in January, and Campbell was obviously still injured, I just didn't see him getting back into the mix. But since he's come back, he's just been absolutely instrumental for him. And I like the fact.
I'm going to jump in there. Do you think that comes down to Chrissy Wilder's man management that we've been talking about? Because he was at Stoke and he didn't really. I know he had injuries. He didn't really set the head on a light. He lost his father. And that's going to be taken into consideration as well. And he looks a different player.
I think so. I think you're right. I think that kind of management works wonders with some players, doesn't it? And I think you're right. He's probably put his arm around him and said all the right things. And you've got to give Wilder credit for that, because there's always been felt that there's been a player there, but he just hasn't done it for a long time now. And then, like you said, his contract ran out at Stoke, free agent. His dad died. You're thinking, can he turn this around? Can he make a name for himself again? Because he's still quite young, really. I think he's only 26, 27, something like that. But yeah, he's been unbelievable. Sheffield United scored all sorts of goals, which is what I like as well. Tap-ins, headers, screamers from outside the box. So yeah, he's been a real gem for Sheffield United, and I bet a lot of Sheffield United fans were the same opinion as me as to when they brought him in. It was a bit like, meh, he's a good player in the squad, a good player to maybe bring off the bench, but he isn't going to be our star man up top this season. And he's proven everyone wrong.
Just a short answer then, because I'm interested, because you got quite juicy there when you started talking about these strikers. Do you think both of them can step up into the Premier League? Do you think they've got it in them? Or if you had to hang your hat on one or the other, let's just say both those clubs go up, Sunderland got through the playoffs, whatever, Sheffield United go up automatic. Do you think Isidore and Tyrese Campbell can make enough of an impact to keep him in that league?
Nah, this is it, man. This is what's crazy. I just feel is that, like, I think, you look at the teams that went up, the strikers they had at their disposal, who have obviously, struggled, immensely this season in the Premier League. I think, I'd be surprised. Look, it's not impossible, because I always think back to blooming Luton and Carlton Morris. He hit 15, 16 goals or whatever it was that season for Luton in the Premier League. Now, that was just mind blowing. I did not expect that anyway whatsoever. So you can't, you can never say absolutely not. But I'd be surprised. Let's put it that way. I think this is the scary thing. That whoever gets promoted, mate, this season. And this is why I think sometimes everyone's clamouring. All the West Brom fans were clamouring, like, we've got to get in the playoffs, we've got to get promoted. But it's like, is anyone looking at what's going on with Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton this season? It's been absolutely grim, for their supporters. So yeah, I think the gap's just immense, mate. I think, as much as those guys are top performers at this level and had great seasons and scored plenty of goals, they will find it incredibly difficult, making that a step up into the Premier League. I think all the teams, to be honest with you, mate, would be looking for doing what Ipswich did and splashing the cash on, a striker, Liam Delap. That'll be top of their shopping list. I would have felt someone who they feel can try and at least hit double figures in the Premier League for them. No,
Sheffield United just brought in 3 strikers, like you mentioned, Kiefer Moore at the start of the season, Berriton Diaz, Tom Cannon. It's going to be. I dare say, mark my words, Tom Cannon and Diaz will be back on loan in the Championship by January next year. 100%.
Well, mate, I think obviously Berriton Diaz is with Southampton, so there's obviously a chance he'll be, he'll remain at South. Is he? Yeah, he is at Southampton. He'll remain at Southampton. Yeah, and he could spearhead them next season. Very good chance of that. you're right with Tom Cannon. I think it's a shame, isn't it? Because he was absolutely flying at Stoke, but Campbell
came on against Coventry. Just nothing was happening naturally, was it? It looked he was desperate to get that goal.
Yeah.
For the lad.
And like you said, and again, that's testament to Campbell and how good a job he's done. That he's kept their, how much did they splash on him? It was something. It was close to 10. Well, yeah. So, he's managed to just keep him well and truly sat on that bench as soon as he come through the door. And again, that's testament to how well Campbell's been playing and holding the line for him.
Okay, that's plenty for us. We are on the road tomorrow. We are at the Hawthorns. We'll be there for West Brom Sunderland. It's turned into a massive game now with this result because that's the first time I think Borough back in the top 6 for the first time in 10 weeks. West Brom was slipped out and Sunderland obviously come with. Did they have much to play for? We know they're going to finish 4th. We shall see. That one thing's guaranteed: they'll bring a massive travelling support and they will make a lot of noise. So the Albion fans are going to have to be on their A game tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. People have been dipping in and out throughout. So if you have enjoyed it, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and we'll be back on Monday night with all your reaction to the weekend's action. So enjoy your football. Thank you.